everybody. This is UGA Sports Live with Jim Donnan. My name is Radi Nabulsi. I'm joined by Dayne Young, and I am personally in Jacksonville, Florida for the Rivals 5-Star event. Rivals is proud to bring back the 5-Star event. There's 104 of the nation's best players here. 5 stars are walking around all over the place. High 4 stars are here as well. The internet, because we have so many guys pumping out videos and content, it's weak here. So if I fall off, that's my fault. But I'm glad to be back on the show. We had to punt last week, and there's a lot going on here. A great week for Georgia recruiting up to this point. A lot of stuff going on the last 2 weeks. So maybe we could touch on that. But we're at the half end of June. We're getting into July, August 1st or so will be fall camp. We're getting very close to actual football. So with that in mind, we're going to talk some Georgia football today. But, Coach, I got to go to you. You've been telling a lot of jokes lately, and our fans are loving it.
Well, the biggest joke is me being on the show with my physical condition, but I'm trying hard. But I apologize for these shades, but they do look pretty good. So
they do look good.
I have a little issue with my something that I'll tell you about later. But anyhow, just perk me up here. Get you guys going. These guys from Alabama were over on a trip to the Vatican and checking everything out, and they were just amazed about the way everything was set up and everything, and just everything was so big time. And finally, one of these guys said, "Hey, how did he get this deal? I mean, this is unbelievable." And the guide said, "Well, basically, he worked it out with the Cardinals." And the guy said, "It looks like the Giants would have done something like that for Willie Mays." So Willie Mays, one of my all-time faves, he and Mickey Mantle. I mean, I wouldn't even have a childhood without both of them.
Some of those career numbers, Coach, for Willie Mays, look, I'm younger, I get it, but I just didn't even realize how great he was for so long. And then even some years that weren't counted, that he would have probably had the home run record.
Well, he and Ted Williams both served in the military. And but the thing about Willie was I just enjoyed watching him play. He and Mickey Mantle, of course, I got to see Mickey Mantle live in 1951 in Charlotte in a game that the Yankees came up and played an exhibition game against the Charlotte team. And it was just big time for me. I mean, I'm 79. I remember like it was yesterday standing there with my dad. I was proud of my dad, the fact that he took me, and then sitting there watching Joe DiMaggio and Phil Rizzuto and Johnny Mize and all those guys. But that guy from Oklahoma, and you got to mention he's from Oklahoma now.
I knew that was coming. I was waiting. I was going 5'4".
Mickey and also Johnny Bench from Oklahoma, But anyhow, Willie Mays in the 54 series, when he caught that ball over his head, I mean, it was unreal. But anyhow, we got a lot of football to talk about, and Georgia just had a tremendous month here of kids showing up, new players, recruits coming in for official visits, and now the coaches are taking a few days off, rightfully so, to get ready for the season. And but I'm glad to hear that you're down there with a high contingency of people covering these guys, and there'll be plenty of content on the Rivals site, which I know you're really fired up about, Roddy, because you've increased the way it looks on the and all the different things involved. So let's go Rivals.
Yeah, the front page of the Rivals site looks brilliant. They had a few hiccups yesterday as they launched it, but yeah, they've invested a lot of new money into Rivals. So I'm very pleased with how it looks. I'm pleased with the brand launch. They've got us a bunch of new gear, so that Rivals logo. We got a deal with Oakley going on. I'm gonna try to swipe me some of these nice Oakley sunglasses they have down here, but they're giving out to these kids. These kids are getting a ton of gear while they're here. A bunch of Georgia targets are in the building or on their way here tomorrow. They will camp. But yesterday, what was it, the first day of the dead period Georgia racked up. They get Dontrell Glover, the offensive lineman at Langston Hughes, and they get Isaiah Gibson. We have him as a 4-star. Some places have him as a 5-star. I'm sure we will reevaluate that, as will they. But a huge talent, a huge pickup for Georgia. But they've been recruiting well and landing a lot of guys all over the place. C.J. Wiley, the wide receiver out of Milton, announces today at 4 o'clock. So they might get another one today. There's a lot going on. Dayne's going to cover that for us. So we're glad that Dayne will be there. A lot going on. But, Dayne, you said something very interesting about the wide receivers, because we're talking about how many wide receivers Georgia could take in this class, because we were thinking 3 or 4. Now it's looking like 4 or 5.
Yeah, and this is not anything for fans to worry about or anything, but if you look at Georgia's roster right now, there are 5 senior wide receivers, and there's a chance that Dylan Bell, a junior, is performing well enough to go to the NFL draft. He's that kind of talent. This happens a lot at receiver and at defensive back, where you have to backfill positions and bring in people. And Georgia can bring in a lot of guys at wide receiver, either through the portal or through recruiting. But I just thought it was interesting. This is a very old wide receiver group at its core for Georgia. So I'll be curious to see how the younger guys emerge into that this year.
Good point. But we got some young talent, but we've got a quarterback that's old enough to get the ball to those guys. That's why we got Beck. So it's going to be one of those years you just really get fired up about the potential, not only with the underneath stuff, but down the field. So explosive. Arion Smith is the number 1 deep guy, but they really do have a lot of different guys that can smoke it.
Roddy, you with us? I couldn't tell if your internet was hanging tough or not. Looks like it isn't. All right. No worries there.
All right.
As Roddy gets his internet figured out, Coach, just what does it do for a staff when you have recruiting as strong as Georgia has had it here this month? And there's a lot of big targets still out there. Justice Terry decommitting from USC. We know Georgia's going to be hot and heavy after him.
Yeah, I mean, that's the crux of your whole program, Dayne. That's what you got to do is the infusion of talent, replenish your squad, but also build for the future. And certainly if anybody that studies football sees the monumental change in the personnel here since Kirby's been here, and just to continue over and over, just reload. And that's part of the way they plan it. They know what they got to get to, either through the portal or through the young players, to give you the kind of depth you need to compete in this league. And I also think that the camp, we don't talk enough about the camp that they have here, where they bring different kids in and work them out and go through the whole structure of and see if they meet the standards that Kirby has set up along with the staff for each position. But just so many good players came in here the whole month of June. I think they started out May 30th, and just a revolving door of guys coming in for the day. And then you add the 7-on-7. I think close to 100 teams were here over the several days that they had it. And the big part of that for me is not so much the guys that are great players, but let's say a kid's in the 9th or 10th grade, and he gets to come with his fellow teammates to the University of Georgia and go out there and play a 7-on-7 game at Sanford Stadium. You just can't measure that. I mean, it's got to be a thrill. Even if he doesn't become a player, it just kind of gets entrenched in his mind that he's going to, like Georgia from now on, because the coaches do a tremendous job of making sure that the organization is set where all these guys get a good look, and it's not like, you get lost in the shuffle. They really work it hard to make sure every kid feels like it's a premier event for them. And they got a lot of officials here working it, and very competitive. And even in the youth camp, when the youth kids play and they call it the Super Bowl and they play for the championship, it's unbelievable the way these kids get all jacked up about it and get a chance to get the ceremony down there at Sanford Stadium. I mean, it's really strong.
Well, what I was getting at was, as much as fans and members of our site get jacked up over just recruiting wins, that still pales in comparison to the dopamine hit that these coaches get when one of their targets is choosing Georgia. Like it always is a rallying cry for these coaches, right?
Yeah, I think I know what you mean by dopamine, but just in case, but it's good. But
It's a feel good, coach.
It's just like you close the deal. Whatever, say you're a salesman and you worked hard and you laid out a good plan and you got a chance for them to say yes and everything like that. And there's always a little bit of angst at the end that something might go wrong. But boy, I tell you, it's just very rewarding, and it's a two-way street. It makes the kid feel good. It makes the coach feel good because he knows that the family and everybody else are entrusting their young man to him as his coach and to Kirby and the staff here. So, recruiting to me has always been something that I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the hunt, the intrigue, trying to, back in the old days, hide them out, whatever you got to do. It was really funny to see some of these guys chasing around trying to find some of your, because I had to do the same thing and I couldn't find them. But when you knew you had somebody and you hit them out and then you signed them, that was just number one.
I'm going to give Kirby props and rip him at the same time. We used to be able to go to all the camps, the 7-on-7s, the offensive lineman, defensive lineman camps that Kirby would have on, even the little kid camps we wanted to. And a competitor, you're not supposed to talk to the kids on campus. And there was one competitor that kept doing it a lot. And so they basically wound up keeping everybody from going. So I was very frustrated with that because we're not the ones that were talking to kids on campus. We weren't the ones breaking the rules. So everybody got punished. So that I thought was unfair. But Kirby has done a great job of making sure that they get these kids to come in and they test them out and they work them out hard and they put them through, the paces. And if you won't come camp and perform, then your offer is subject to you camping a lot of times. So even though kids want to come to Georgia, Kirby's like, look, you need to come work out. And they also, coach, they use that because there's no media there. They find diamonds in the rough all the time that nobody knows about, because we would take special notice. If the coaches were working one kid specifically, we didn't know who he was, we'd take a bunch of pictures of him, we'd figure it out. We'd put out a big story about, hey, Georgia coaches really like this kid named Isaiah McKenzie that nobody really knows about or something like that. And boom, all of a sudden now Tennessee, Florida, Texas Tech, everybody's reaching out to the kids. So Kirby does a good job of still hiding those kids while he works on them. So every once in a while they get a commit. We're like, who the hell is that guy?
Well, I think in his defense,
it's fair. I mean, I'm not bugging him about it, but
yeah, I think
it just makes me mad.
The real point there is if he does find a diamond in the rough, and they can keep somebody from finding out about it, it makes it easier for us to get them. But it very seldom does that happen. Most of the guys we got coming in here are, I saw on your site reading here this weekend that they had this big basketball player in here from California, and amazing guy's bigger than, I heard he was bigger than just about anybody around here. And
he would be our historian Patrick Garvin, coach, looked into this. So Jazeer Jackson played basketball in high school. He didn't play football. He declared for the NBA draft last year, didn't get drafted. He's, depending on what website you look at, he's either 6'11" or 7 foot. So he's basketball center, 300 to 330 pounds, depending on whose things you like. Watch the video, and the guy can move. And I've always said, I've always used your comments about an offensive lineman who could dunk a basketball. You always talk about how you want those athletic big men. This guy can move. So
I think it's great that you checked it out like that. And then the thing about it, if you just remember the Cowboys, when they were first really rolling there, and Gil Brandt was the personnel guy for Coach Landry, and he was going to all these schools, lesser schools, and finding some guys could come in there and supplement the roster. And I never will forget Too Tall Jones. I mean, what a player he was. I think he could have played football. I don't know, but for some reason, I think he was a basketball player. And then they got some really good receivers that, were track guys and things like that. But you're always looking. I mean, you see an influx around the world here of younger guys that play football in foreign countries. All of a sudden, Canada, Germany, you got kids coming into some of these schools and playing too. So there's a lot of ways to get good players.
No, that's really good. This kid would be interesting. Can you imagine giving Stacey Searles a 6'11", 7 foot, 330-pound guy who hasn't? I mean, I think he played in like 8th grade, but he didn't play high school football. He's had a year off to play basketball. He doesn't think it's going to work out. You give him, I guess we call him a project, but a lot of people take that negatively. But you get a guy like that, and coach, you don't have to play him. You have good offensive tackles at Georgia. You have great offensive line. This isn't a guy you're going to thrust out there, against Clemson in game 1 and say, hey, go do something. This is a guy, you could take your time and get him to develop.
Right.
That's a luxury. I don't think a lot of teams could sign him because they wouldn't have it. They throw him into the fire too fast.
Yeah, he's got the tools, though, that you can develop, particularly the long arms. But I can just see him saying, okay, we're going to do zone today. And he's going to say, is that a 3-2 or a 2? No, we're talking about the gallop step and zone block, not the basketball. But
it's like, not block out. You got to kick slide, I love it.
Well, hey, let's take a break here and thank our friends at Athens Ford, longtime sponsors of UGASports Live and the UGASports Watch-Along Show with head coach Jim Donnan. There's some great specials over at Athens Ford right now. The Ford Edge is a sleek-looking vehicle. I'll tell you, because my wife and I just had our 3rd kid, and I'm seeing all these bigger vehicles for families that just need to take kids everywhere. And the Ford Expedition is one right now. You can get up to $9,000 off or 2.9% APR financing for 72 months. You can see that on the specials tab over at Athens Ford's website. It's a new Revant website as well, but I think probably the easiest way, Roddy, and you've told me this, easiest way to see what they have is go check them out in person. If you live far away, they'll get on a FaceTime or a Zoom with you and show you what they have on the lot. But so many good options out there. I still want one of those Ford Broncos. I just don't know that it really aligns with my time in life having 3 young kids.
I looked into one of their cars the other day for a friend of mine she needed a reliable vehicle. And so I went and looked at one of theirs. And the crazy thing was, it was a pre-owned vehicle. They had 93 photos of it. It's not just one. It's like they took pictures of the cup holder. That's insane. So if you want to look at a vehicle and you don't feel like actually going out to the lot, but you want to see what in absolute detail, and it's pictures good and bad. Oh, hey, what? Here's a scratch on the bumper. We're going to show it to you in a picture so you see it, and you're not surprised when you come out there. So hit up our friends at Athens Ford. They'll take good care of you. Also want to mention our friends over at Academic Brewing Company because you're in the same area there. If you are on the west side of Athens, you go by Athens Ford. Just go down to Academic Brewing Company. Get yourself a great beer. Get the Just Give Me All the Bacon beer they have. It's a perfect beer for any of the brunch items. It is a bourbon barrel-aged maple bacon coffee imperial stout. So they have some fun stuff over there. And of course, they have their nice lagers. It's summer, it's hot. They have some fantastic IPAs. The Hopperdesiac, of course, one of their all-time bestsellers. So check out our friends at Academia Brewing Company. You will be glad you did. The folks out there are giant Georgia fans. They support the Bulldogs, so you can support them. You get great food and great beer. So hit them up on the IG.
So I titled this episode, Which Superstars Will Emerge? And I'm basing this on if Georgia were to win a national championship. I've heard coaches say this all the time. Like, we know the top 10 players on this roster that can ebb and flow, but we know the 10 superstars that the NFL is looking at right now. There's a lot of guys on this roster with talent who are going to emerge and make a big difference for Georgia. If Georgia gets to the national championship, I've got 10 guys for you that I think can contribute to those efforts. I'm not saying they're going to go win a Heisman or anything, but these are players that I think can contribute to Georgia in very meaningful ways this year. I've got 5 on offense, 5 on defense. Coach was the quarterback, so I'm going to throw the offense ones out to him. And I just want your reactions to these players and their potential. And I'll start, Coach, with Roderick Robinson.
I think Roderick has made a big stride here, taking advantage of the fact that a couple guys weren't here in the spring, and he really is a different type back than we've seen here as far as just a pure size, but has pretty good quickness, and he's got good hands, and he's fluid. You just don't know with the emergence of ETN and with the other kid coming back off a knee, whether he's going to really be full go or not. But and then these freshmen that are in here, I heard those two guys can really fly. The two freshmen we got. So, but I think Roderick is a really good guy to be a team member and really contribute, whether it's short yardage or whatever it might be. But I'm glad we got him.
Would he be like a Kendall Milton
contributing type back? I don't think he's as fast as Kendall, but he might be, but he's loose. Everybody just sees him running over people, but he's got the good first step, and he's got a good motor too. I like the way he competes, and I think everything's ahead of him.
Roddy, first one for you on defense. And I'll add, I didn't run any of these names by either of you. So audience, you're getting the genuine reaction.
I need to get out my roster here, figure out who these guys are.
Got no chance with Roddy, no cheat sheet there. He's going to be
I'm going to toss you a
softball. Stairwell, man, come on.
I'm going to toss you a softball at first, though. We hear a lot about C.J. Allen. What about Raylan Wilson?
Raylan Wilson. I mean, there was we heard such good things about him in the spring that I'm pretty excited about. That was his name popped up because we would ask, hey, who's really standing out? And the coaches and staff, they hate answering that. They absolutely do, because they're like, well, if we say one guy, then it's, the other guys aren't. And Coach points out all the time in the spring games, if one guy if the offense does really well, then the defense complains. But the first 2 weeks, remember they go about 5 weeks in spring, 3 practices a day. First 2 weeks, we kept hearing Raylan Wilson. And again, they were in shorts and stuff then for that first week, and then they put on the pads. The second half, I didn't hear as much. So I'm at a loss as to how much I expect him to contribute. I mean, it's a lot of players at his position. Got the talent, but I don't know. Coach, your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I think he's just got to do it when the band's playing. He certainly does it in practice. And one of the good things about where Roddy is right now is if some girl in a mini skirt comes down those steps, it's going to be an unbelievable show here. Let's go.
Man, to put a new label on the show at that point.
No, but see, okay, that helps because, again, like I said, the first 2 weeks, heard a lot about Raylan Wilson. As they started getting into the scrimmages, I didn't hear as much.
Well, we're okay. Let's keep it down to 45 seconds on them.
Sticking at wide receiver from our earlier conversation, Coach Anthony Evans is one that's getting a lot of buzz after his G-Day performance.
The thing about Anthony that I like is just the explosive ability, which was shown in the Alabama game. He's got such good first step and quickness, and to be a good punt returner, first of all, you got to have ability to catch the ball and be consistent, but also make the first guy miss, which he can do. And that's hard to do when a guy's coming full speed and you haven't started really met your speed factor because you're gathering yourself to get going. But he's got extreme quickness, good hands, and has a real deep threat on top of it. The biggest thing with him is what you mentioned earlier is the guys in front of him. It's just going to be how quickly he can get in. But I can see some infusion into the game, but throw him some bubble screens or just getting the ball 2 or 3 times beside the kick returns because he's an explosive player.
All right, Roddy, a lot of belly aching about the defensive line at Georgia last year. Not it was bad. It just was. It wasn't when it was when it had Jalen Carter, right?
Spoiled. Yes.
Xavier McLoud comes over from South Carolina, not getting a whole lot of chatter around the country. This was a stud recruit. And I'm curious if the change of scenery makes him one that can really emerge for Georgia.
From what I heard, yes. And again, I'm not trying to, sugarcoat things or, give a positive spin on these guys. Again, I mean, Wilson, a lot of guys ahead of him. He's got to come in and learn, Trey Scott's system. There are questions about it. And again, this isn't for me. The guy played at South Carolina, then stopped playing. So like, well, he quit. Well, I don't know his situation. I wouldn't put that on him, but he does have to prove himself. Georgia jumped on him. If he's good enough for Trey Scott with his list of successes into the NFL, I'm not going to second guess him at all. I'm sure that they did all their I dotting and T crossing and double checking and background stuff. Like, what really happened? Let's get your story and here are the expectations of Georgia. I did not hear one negative thing about him throughout the spring, throughout the summer. He is a stud recruit. He has the potential there, and we can talk about the guys ahead of him, but it's not like there's some big ringer out there. You're like, oh, well, he's not going to beat out Devontae Wyatt. He's not going to beat out Jordan Davis. There's not a guy like that. So to me, it is wide open. Jordan Hall's great. You got some seniors coming back, but if McLeod can play, McLeod will play.
What I like about him is from the standpoint of sometimes when things don't go right, it's a good learning process for you to understand what you're missing out on, and you don't want to have that same scenario happen. So you're going to be overly cautious of being coachable, of doing everything right and learning technique. So, the fact that these guys were at our place gave him this second chance, and he's got that opportunity, and he sees so many of our guys going on to the league, and he's got the big body. But I always felt like a guy like him is going to be better because of the people around him. He's not going to have to just destroy people at the line of scrimmage. He's just got to take on blocks and keep people off these linebackers and get in there and give us 20, 25 snaps, to keep everybody fresh and then be ready to really take over next year. But he's a good addition.
Coach, this one I think a lot of Georgia fans are very high on, but nationally I don't know that he has quite the name recognition. Micah Morris on the offensive line, the potential with him to make a big difference for Georgia, pushing around other defensive lines.
Yeah, easily one of the strongest players in the program, and a guy that's just kind of been a victim of having so many good players ahead of him. He's so talented that sometimes his motor doesn't run 1,000% maybe, and the coaches can't understand why. And I think that's just a little thing. There's not, but he definitely has grown up a lot, has matured, and his motor runs all the time. And he's got a really good contingent of players there in Fairchild and also Ratledge. That those three guards give us three guys that can play for anybody.
I do want to point out that Coach called this years ago. I think we were at Brunswick Bulldog Club or someplace like that. And he was still in high school. And of course, they want to ask him about the local kid. He's like, I'm telling you, Mike Morris is going to be good. He's going to have to adjust to play at Georgia. I remember it's clear as day. Coach called him. Mike Morris.
He's just stronger than Ajax. And that's for old people. That's the foaming cleanser, that is strong.
Cut through anything. That's what Ajax would do. Right. Roddy, Gabe Harris kind of represents just the talent and depth at Georgia. Again, a stud recruit in the middle of that defense. What about Gabe Harris?
I heard a lot of great stuff about Gabe Harris. When they brought in those three edge guys, outside linebacker, defensive end, can play him around, Gabe looks like he's going to rip somebody's head up. Very smart player. Definitely see him getting some action out there. You got Chaz Chambliss. How long can he? Definitely knows what to do. But you had those three guys that he was starting over because they were true freshmen. I think Gabe is going to be an absolute star going forward. I'm very excited about him. Damon Wilson, all those guys on the edge. I think that it's been a while since we've had the Azeez Ojulari, that guy who can just tear it up from the side. Of course, Jalen Walker can get out there to do some of that. But you just want a guy who's got the strength to take on those defensive tackles and the speed to get into the backfield. give me Gabe Harris, or Wilson. Very happy with the potential that he does. And again, I think kind of like a Garris Jackson in that national title game. Just there's going to be one huge play that he made. It may not, he may not make 14 catches in the game, but he makes one huge one. I guarantee you, at some point in a tough game, all of a sudden you're going to see Gabe Harris with a sack or just a tackle for loss, and it won't be the leading play of that game, but it'll be one where it's like, wow, that third down, they don't come off the field without Gabe Harris on that down, or that 2nd and 14 was because of Gabe Harris, and we'll be talking about him when we're watching on the show.
Coach, you mentioned Arion Smith in the spring. Been around at Georgia a long time, battled injuries early. Said there was something a little bit different about him, so I'm kind of giving you the platform here to expound what that potential looks like for Arion Smith in a crowded receiver room, but no one faster than him.
Yeah, I just think the change of coaches, and it's nothing against B-Mac. It's nothing against anybody. It's just the fact that Coley comes in here as a new coach. Everybody's got is going to be looked at based on what they do and not what they've done. And he took the bull by the horns. By that I mean Arion, and he really worked hard on his hand placement and did a lot of hand-eye coordination drills with Coach Coley. And he, he kind of got in a slump there. A year ago and was dropping a few balls. And if you got some other guys out there that can catch them, then there's a tendency maybe not to get as many looks. But without a doubt, he's the best cover guy on punts in the country. He is unbelievable. If he's not, the other guys love it. Who's on the other side? These guys are they take such good pride in it. So he helps you there. He could be a kickoff return guy. He's among the fastest guys in the country in any sport. And I look for him to play a significant role on our team and got a good attitude. I mean, he's had every reason to maybe think about in his own mind that maybe he could do something somewhere else, but he loves Georgia. And I always felt like this. I've always had a few guys and I always tell everybody about this. That senior year is going to be the one you remember the most. The rest of your life, that's what you're going to reflect back on because it's the culmination of your whole career, your junior high, high school, college. For a lot of you, it's the last time you'll ever play, and you got to make the most of it. You got to take advantage of it, and I really think Arion will.
I think people need to remember that when he qualified for the 100 meters in the NCAA finals, his qualifying time to make it to the finals was a 10.16. I don't think people understand how fast that is. That's just nuts.
Roddy, I'm looking for depth at defensive back. I think Georgia will need that with an elongated season. Daniel Harris. So I give you Gabe Harris. Let's go over to Daniel Harris.
Daniel Harris, I mean, how do you keep him off the field? That's an absolute battle. So he gets first string snap. He and Julian Humphrey are going to be battling over there against Taylor Everett. So Georgia's depth is great. They're having a hard time recruiting, or they don't have a lot of recruits in this current class because a lot of kids we talked to are like, oh, well, yeah, Kirby loves his defensive backs. He goes after them really hard, absolutely. But give me a kid out of Miami, Daniel Harris. I was having a conversation with the FSU publisher yesterday talking about Florida guys. And he was like, yeah, there's not been a bunch of great Florida QB, Miami QBs, meaning a QB from Miami. Now, there are a lot of them who, like Bernie Kosar and guys like that, who went to Miami, but they weren't from Miami. So, that's been impressive. But he's like, just the way South Florida kids and Florida kids in general, how fast they are. Yeah, give me Daniel Harris every day of the week. I'm big fan of him.
Georgia defensive back, I think, is going to be deeper than most people realize. We've talked a ton about Ellis Robinson and his potential as a true freshman, which that's a position that's really hard to come in and make an impact like that. But he has the talent to do so. That's why I brought up Daniel Harris, though, just for the depth piece.
Yeah, I mean, he's just a sophomore, so he showed out pretty good last year. You get by with him. I'm excited to see Andre Evans. Chanel Aguero, big hitter.
Well, I'll give you.
KJ Bolden. Again, these.
Hey, we got plenty of them, but hey, you remember back when the Raiders were playing and he had that guy Haynes, the corner. I can't Zabner Haynes or something like that. That just had those really long arms and could just lock on to people back when you could bump and run.
But you could grab them. Yeah.
And he actually put some kind of grease on his hands to keep them. But Daniel Harris, I mean, he's got those long arms and he can really, he just got. I like the fact that went through a little bit of a situation there where he wasn't sure whether he's going to stay or not, but he really did. I mean, he made a commitment, and it just shows you that they trust Kirby and trust the coaches, and he's getting supreme coaching here. I mean, these guys do a good job teaching, and we've got a good situation there. And of course, Robinson, good Lord, top corner in the country. So you got 4 corners there plus the other guys, but the thing's going to help them. We got the linebacking core too, can really play pass. So you just can't work on the underneath coverage. You're going to have to throw the ball. To be a good football team, if any of you are coaching out there, you got to throw something to the outside. I mean, if you don't, they're not going to defend it. If you can't throw the ball laterally to the outside and then vertically down the field, people are going to stop the run on you just because of the way they put the influx of their defense. And so you got to be able to do that. And I think people are going to have to attack our outside because we're going to be really good in the covering these underneath routes. And just our linebackers are so good that I'm talking about big time. I'm not talking about, if you go to a movie, there's a marquee movie there. We got marquee linebackers. I'm talking about just not stronger than Ajax, stronger than bridge cable.
I think if we were any other school, your first one, Dane, about like Ray Wilson, be like, well, he's your starting guy. And we have to talk about the fact there's so many ahead of him. I'm like, that's the coach is right. Your linebackers are nuts.
We had an all-conference linebacker transfer to Kentucky.
Yeah.
So,
that's a great point.
And he's a good player, but and we got some freshman linebackers that are breathing down those guys' butts too. I mean, woo.
So, one more on each side to wrap this, a transfer each. Coach, I'm looking for a tight end that's going to take some of the lion's share of what's behind from Brock Bowers going pro. Ben Urosic coming in from Stanford in the summertime. Seems like someone that's getting a little buzz right now.
Well, he should. I mean, he caught 70-some passes out there for the Stanford team that really was struggling. First year new coach and didn't really have a very good offense. But here's the point. You just got to trust Kirby and Hartley and Bobo. There's no way you're going to bring a guy in for 1 year unless he can make an impression on your team quickly. And you have certain needs, whether it's you got to have 2 tight end situation where he can be the alternate one on the other side, whether he can be a guy that can move out and flex out, and maybe play delt tight or play lucky tight. I mean, certainly these young guys are going to be good, those 2, but I think the fact that, the one kid had to have a medical disqualification hurt our depth a little bit. So, and this guy's got the attention. There's one thing for the coaches to talk about him, but when you go around over there and one of the personnel guys come up to you or just a manager or have you seen that kid from Stanford yet, Coach? I mean, that's happened to me like at least 3 times. And I haven't been over there nearly as much as I usually do because of this situation I got health-wise. But I'm just telling you right now, smart move by our staff and a smart move by the kid too. He's going to be thrown to by a great quarterback. He's in a system that's tight end friendly. He's in the best league in America. He's going to get showcased, and it was a good investment. I'm sure that he could have gone a lot of other, but he's investing in his career coming here, which is smart. He wasn't worried about who we had because he knows that if you're a transfer guy, you got to look at a lot of different ways. You got to look at what your chances are to play, but also to get where you need to go. And just to me, this was kind of the Smith Barney deal of the year. It was one of those really good stock moves and enhanced our team and enhanced this kid.
And Roddy, finally, I gave you a go ahead.
I don't get nearly as much insight as Coach does, but I've been known for doing the weekly tweet about the tight ends, and Pierce Spurlin getting hurt just kind of broke my heart. Such a good kid. So there are people in the program that know I'm a big tight end fan, and I got from 3 different texts from 2 different people. This Stanford kid's really good. You're gonna be doing weekly tweets about him. I'm like, okay. So yeah, Ben's gonna be something.
I gave you the depth at corner. Here's one at safety that I just haven't heard a lot about because I think of the depth that Georgia has there. Jake Pope comes in from Alabama. Saw him in G-Day.
Yeah, I have. To me, there's no downside to getting a Jake Pope. Okay, you get him from a good high school that you're always trying to pull kids from. We've got him on the team. Some kids maybe played with him, wind up playing with him again. Or at least you can point to him. Hey, we've had kids with success from there. Went to Alabama. Georgia wasn't too heavy on him the first time. He knows the Alabama system. He knows the Georgia system. You need depth at safety. So to me, it's basically I don't say a can't lose situation, but if it works out, great. But I have no expectations for him. So if he gives you a couple plays, 5-10 plays, fantastic. I'm not expecting a lot from him. So to me, anything is a bonus.
Here's the number one thing about Jake: knowledge of assignment. He knows the Georgia defense. He also has the same coach that he had last year at Alabama, who knows him inside and out. So that's a really big plus right there. So he can go in and not make any mental. He could make mental error, that's for sure, but
he shouldn't.
He knows what to do, and then he's great special teams guy. I mean, he's really a guy that can help your team. That we're going to use Malachi on special teams. There's no question about it. But if for some reason we could use him and maybe Malachi take a blow, I mean, it's worth it there just from that standpoint. And then you got Dan Jackson, the same thing, Mr. Special Teams. I mean, everything he does about it is great. So. This is just another example of Kirby Paul Smart thinking about the future and doing it.
Well, I wanted to do this because we talk so much about transfer portal and college football changes and playoff and media contracts. I wanted to talk about the players on this team and not just Carson Beck and not just Malachi Starks, but I want to go deep into this roster a little bit and see who are going to be the guys that can help elevate Georgia what it's trying to be. And I think these are some of them.
This is our team, man. That's good. Hey, how about Daniel Calhoun? Make my mouth water. Daniel Calhoun, make my mouth water. Daniel Calhoun, make my mouth water.
Let me make a note there. June 25th, Coach. Raving about Calhoun.
He's been saying earlier than that. Go back to January 25th. I mean, he's been talking about Daniel Calhoun for a long time. But he did the same thing with Jordan Davis. Everybody's like, "Who? That fat North Carolina kid?"
Yep. But Carter was the best one I ever came up with.
Yeah.
So anyhow, I was just going to ask you, Roddy, you going to get any good groceries down there? What's your plan on the eating?
I will go to a place for dinner called The Real Ting, a Jamaican place. It is right above a wild club. It's a fun place to go. So if you're ever in downtown Jacksonville, go to The Real Ting, Ting, and get you some good Jamaican Caribbean food. I'm gonna get some oxtails this afternoon. Looking forward to that. Then of course tomorrow night, your rivals will be something. So Well, that's the grocery situation. Is the Jamaican place.
Good.
Now, if I will have to feed all the guys that came down here. We have 5 other staffers here besides myself. And I guess I'll have to do that thing where the boss takes them out to dinner. So we'll go get some good seafood out at Jack's Beach here in a bit.
Get some oysters, man. Get some oysters.
Oysters. Hopefully get some grouper, maybe some redfish.
I like it.
You know me, I love the seafood, Coach. So we're Jacksonville. We're right there on the Atlantic. So hopefully we get some good groceries in. Speaking of good groceries,
I took us old country boy out to eat one time up in Asheville, North Carolina. I said, "Would you like a shrimp cocktail?" He said, "Coach, I don't drink."
That's a good one. If you want a good meal and you're not in Jacksonville, you're not able to get some good seafood, hit up our friends at Europie. Today's Tuesday. It's Double Points Tuesday. So if you use the app, you'll get double points. Those points add up incredibly fast. They give you free pizzas, free wings, free drinks, free gelato.
There's a Europie location in Jacksonville too, Roddy, just so you know.
I actually know where it is. There are 70 plus locations of Europie. So speaking of, if you're like, hey, I don't like my job anymore, I like to do something cool, you can open a Europie. They do franchise them out, and you'd be very smart to do so. I know a friend who was one of the greatest sports photographers of all time. He made a lot of money doing it. Bob Rosado, he's one of the best I've ever seen. He now has 2 Europie locations, and he's richer than King Midas. So if you want to do really well, open up a Europie, and if you want good food, try Europie, get a good pizza, get a good salad, get a good sandwich, and the pasta, custom pastas, you'll be happy you did so. Speaking of franchises, I want to mention our friends at My Perfect Franchise. So let's say you don't want to do a restaurant franchise, you want to do something different. Reach out to Andy Ludecky at myperfectfranchise.net. He has 3,000 plus different franchise options for you. He will get you into the franchise that makes the most sense for you, the one you're excited about. You won't go from a dead-end job to a dead-end franchise. You will go into something that you absolutely love to do. You'll be excited to wake up in the morning. You'll be excited about the trajectory of your life going forward. You'll be excited to be the boss. The best way to do that is reach out to Andy Ludecky at myperfectfranchise.net and decide what you want to do going forward. He will help you with that.
Let's finish the show with questions from UGAsports.com. If there's any on YouTube or Facebook, drop them now. We'll get to them for the end of the show. UGA Alum 95 says, last year some teams had success running the ball against Georgia. Coach, how do you think Georgia's run defense will stack up this year as compared to last year?
Certainly there were some definite it's hard to slow everybody down cold, but I think first of all, our having small back full time instead of playing with the hurt ankle is going to help our linebacker situation. Even though athletically these linebackers were starting to do pretty well, they didn't know the system and maybe made some mechanical errors that hurt us a little bit. And I do think, as Roddy mentioned, our outside situation is going to be good. And, we didn't mention Michael Williams playing some outside too. So interior front is going to be okay. I think they won't get pushed around, and these linebackers are just going to be stellar. So I think our run defense will be a little bit better. And I also think we won't see as many runs because we're going to be ahead against most teams, and they're going to be trying to catch up on us. So, they might get some garbage runs because we're playing nickel and dime stuff. But this is going to be one of the better defenses at Georgia.
I'd also like to see how they break down by quarter. So like Coach pointed this out years ago, and I didn't really notice it as much, when the teams start getting behind and they have to throw it a lot. And then I would really like to compare first half and second half run totals, because it is telling about how dominant Georgia's been over the years. It is when you get into the data there, it's mind-boggling how Georgia shut teams down, and then they have to throw it. Well, they had 12 yards in the second half.
Have you ever noticed, though, and it's just the pride that Kirby has in his whole team, but particularly in the defense, and we could be beating somebody in a submission, and then the second or third team guy goes in there and the guy makes a play on us, and the guy gets 40 yards or 30 or, and he's just into them. he's trying to coach them for the future, but he's also letting them know he's letting down the rest of the defense as far as, they take a lot of pride of being a top 5 defense nationally. I mean, that's a big part of their talk and recruiting and everything. So, if you're going to get in the game, you better go in there and produce, because they want to. They're not stat conscious, but they're just pride conscious.
From OU, Herschel Walker, coach, with recent whispers that Branson Robinson may play sooner than expected, do you expect him to be ready to go when Georgia plays in Tuscaloosa or in Austin?
Yeah, I would hope by then, but it's just such a debilitating injury, not to mention an athlete, but anybody to have that happen, that he's made a remarkable recovery, and they just want to be really careful here and not try to get him in just to get him in. You know what I mean? So he's just going to, I would think, by Alabama for sure. But I'm not the doctor and I'm not Ron Corson, but well, I'll tell you what, that's a powerful guy that's got really good speed. And not many people got a back that scored 2 touchdowns in a national championship game. I mean, that's what he did. I mean, didn't he score 2? I think he did.
Yeah, he did. He's also one of the strongest guys you'll meet. Good hands. He can be a superstar. But you're right. That's a tough injury to come back from.
From Brett Goodell, Roddy, what's the difference between an official visit and a non-official visit, other than the official visit is something that Georgia pays all the expenses for? Is there a typical itinerary for either of these types of visits?
Coach is the one that actually hosted a lot of these, but I'll give it a shot, and Coach can correct me. I guess Georgia is able to pay for your transportation to the school. They put you up, nice hotels. They treat you all the food and stuff. You can do a photo shoot. You can't do a photo shoot on an unofficial visit. They can do the tours and all that stuff with you, and then they can pay for your way to go home. There's a lot, have more meetings with, like, say, you're Justice Terry and you want to open a barber shop when you're done, and you want to open a trucking company. We'll say, okay, well, to really manage this, you need to, we got the Terry College of Business. We'll have the dean of the business school come sit down and talk to you, which shout out to all the administrators who make time to come and help out with the recruiting. These are teachers and professors that don't need to do this, but they do. So you got to give them credit for that. Unofficial visit, there is an itinerary, but it's more off the cuff, because the kid can just show up and say, hey, can you show me around? And they will. But again, it's on the student. It's on the prospective student athletes to come in, and he's got to pay his way there. Folks come, they have to pay their way. You don't get as much choice about feeding them and all that stuff. So there's a lot more limited on it. Now, sometimes you can have a kid come in on an unofficial visit, like Elijah Griffin did. He can tag along with all the guys that are doing the official visit stuff. There's just certain things that they can't pay for on the officials.
I think the biggest change on official visits is it used to be you could provide transportation for the student athlete, and if the parents came in the same car, they got that gas mileage. But now, if they fly, the parents had to pay. Now you can pay for the parents to fly. All the transportation's paid for the family, and if you want to bring 18 people beside that, I don't know how many of them they pay for, but it's pretty good, and it's a good way to do it. The other thing is the biggest point about an unofficial visit is most of the time, if a guy's coming back on his own dime and he's coming here, that looks pretty good, because the more he can be around you and be around your culture and let your players talk about what the program's all about, I mean, that's huge.
From UGA three-peat, excited about Isaiah Gibson. Coach, do you have a comp for Isaiah Gibson? Is there anyone that he might remind you of? That's hard to do, especially with high school players.
Not really sure there on that one yet. I probably could give it to you when I see him live.
Okay. Red and black in the day. Which player from a Jim Donnan team might have garnered more attention in a 2024 Kirby Smart program? Just another way of asking this. Is there a player that you coach that might have flourished more to something that Kirby does differently than you, or maybe just the time that you coach as compared to now?
Where the game's changed.
I mean, I could name a lot of them because they get to practice more. They do a lot of things that some of our guys, if they'd had the same kind of the different repetitions in practice that they get now, those 8 hours a week that they get year round would have really helped some of these guys, but not anybody in particular, really.
Red and Black in the Day also said, Coach, as a player in the 60s, how different were the field conditions where you played? Was there some of the best and some of the worst? Was it uniform? How did that work?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the teams in the South have always taken a lot of pride in their manicuring because so many schools have agriculture departments. That the fields that I played on were always good, with the exception of maybe when we would go up north and it was colder. But when we got to play one game on turf in the Astrodome back in '67 when it was the first years they had that. So that was fun too. But it was, certainly the equipment, nothing like it is now. And I would have loved to have a bigger face mask than the one I had. I had that single bar thing, and I needed a lot of protection.
Yeah, protect that pretty face, right?
But I did wear.
That's a money maker.
Yeah.
One of the first. I think our trainer was one of the first to get the fitted mouthpieces. We had to go to the dentist there, and they had for the quarterbacks, a smaller mouthpiece where you could, talk better because you had those old bulky ones, and so that was really kind of unique to have one of those custom fitted mouthpieces where you could talk better in the huddle. And we had to say so much. We had so much wordage in it used to gripe me. I mean, our coach used to say, if you can say it in the huddle, we'll run it. Come on.
I always tell people, it's like, if you've never bitten down on a mouthpiece taken right out of boiling water, then you ain't lived,
From GT and UGA, why do people wear golf spikes to go watch a golf tournament?
People wear them to watch it. The only thing that I could think of would be going up and down hills, or something like that where they don't want to slip, but unless they just want to act like they're, really a golf, they just really know what they're doing about golf. But I don't know why you'd wear golf spikes for that. But
seems like a grown-up taking the baseball glove to the baseball game. I get it with kids, but grown-ups I've never understood.
Yeah, I mean,
I get the grown-ups. They want to catch the ball. I get it. But for me, I'm pretty sure it's because at some point BJ Singh is going to ask you to come out and try to knock down that 30-foot putt. So you need to have the right shoes on. Because he can tag out. He can tag you and tag somebody else in.
What's good about golf, though, is just the fact that last week we're watching the Pinehurst where, man, if they can just get a par here, and then this week we're watching up at Travelers and, let's get another birdie. Let's get another birdie. It just depends on the quality of the course. And these players are just so good with their irons and their wedges. But it just shows you the difficulty that Pinehurst presents compared to these other courses are hard, but, you got those tough ones.
I remember everybody crying about Bethpage Black, just saying, this is the hardest thing ever. I'm like, yeah. You're the best golfers in the world. Shut up. You're all played on the same one.
You see guys put the ball off the green. I mean, how the average fan feels.
Let me sneak in 3 more questions before the bell here. Goat Dog, are we going to see Dwight Phillips on special teams? That 10-4 speed needs to be on the field.
I think it's just a case of how much imprint he can make in the running back room. If he's one of the 5, then they'll use him. But the good thing about that first game, I don't think they have a limit on the amount of players that can go over there, even though it's a off-campus game. But certainly when we go to Kentucky and Alabama, I think you can take maybe 4 more now. I think it's 74 instead of 70. So, but that kind of speed is just you got to use it. So I'm sure they'll find a way to get him out there.
Billy Zane thinks that Georgia will have more speed at inside linebacker as compared to last year with a healthy Munden, with C.J. Allen, Raylan Wilson, a lot of stuff we've talked about. Do you think that Georgia will change coverages or alignments to take advantage of having greater speed, sideline to sideline?
Yeah, that's a good question by Billy. I think the thing that you can do, number one, is you can play more man under coverage, because these guys on man under, you're playing the corners inside technique and trying to take away crossing routes and things like that. But when you do that, you've got to put a linebacker and a safety on a tight end and the backs. So, and most quarterbacks are going to attack those three positions more than they will the corners. So we can play more two-man, which we love to play. And we can also use more pressure, which you play man coverage with the pressure from the outside, either the safety or the nickel or inside blitz or whatever it might be. And the last thing would be some zone blitz where you show man coverage, but the guy doesn't necessarily blitz. He just drops off. So to try to screw up the protection. So I can see a myriad of different things that can be better, just because the ability, it kind of constricts you if your linebackers are not really good cover guys, because you got to be careful about letting them play man-to-man these NFL type players in the SEC.
Final question here, red and black in the day. Do you think the modern tennis game would be better if we return to using wood rackets, essentially reduce the overwhelming reliance on baseline and reintroduce the serve and volley? And for your information, he says, his 1970s era spec was a Wilson Jack Kramer autograph, 4.5-inch grip, catgut string strung at 65 pounds.
Well, he had a good one there. I use a 4 5/8 Jack Kramer, and strung mine about 62. But I think it's just technology's taken over, but the athleticism that so many people are playing tennis that never did. It used to kind of be a country club sport where, by that I meant, there weren't as many places for people that didn't have money to play. There's a lot more out there, and I would hate to see us go back to that serve and volley thing, because although that's what I'm having to do now a little bit more, because I can't run like I used to. Matter of fact, I'm trying to just run it all, but I think certainly, and people don't want to hear much about it, but it's the fact that he gave it, I would say let's stay with these big rackets and go for it.
There's a market adjustment too. A guy like Carlos Alcaraz is chipping and doing a lot of drop shots. So you get some version of a serve and volley with that kind of game. There's more up and back than there was 10 years ago.
Oh, he can watch Wimbledon. You can see more of that right there. You'll see more of that in Wimbledon.
I do this to annoy Roddy more than anything else.
You do. I'm ducking out of here. All right, folks, that's all the time we have for this week's show. I need to hang up here and fire Dayne Young, get rid of it. Well, no, Dayne, you can cover C.J. Wiley's announcement at 4 o'clock. And if he picks Georgia, you can keep your job. If not, just don't bother to come back.
Got one more joke to go here. So this little country boy went in to buy a pair of shoes at Walmart, and all of them were really tight. He just couldn't find any to fit him. And finally the guy says, "Hey, why don't you try these with the tongue out? And he put them on. He said, "Feel too tight." Okay.
I didn't see that one coming. Son of a bitch, get me again. All right, folks, this is all the time we have for this week. We will see you next week. Take care.